All right, I want to give an update of our wrestling figure collection. A month or so ago, I did a video kind of showing off some of our wrestling figures, and we have added quite a few since that video. Now, we haven't only bought one or two. We bought one or two at Jamie's Flea Market last weekend. But Ethan and Brady have, they're getting older, and they have several hundred, 300 or 400 wrestling figures that they have bought and got for Christmas, got for birthdays over the years. Big wrestling figure fans. Ethan's 18 now. Brady's going to be 16. So they've kind of got to the point where they're like, I don't really need the wrestling figures anymore. Ethan, the older one, he wants to keep them, but he allowed me to us to display them down here in the our basement. Brady said, I don't really want them anymore. So great, I'll take them. And so I'm just going to show off a little bit how things have changed over the last few weeks. I'm not going to mention every wrestler, though. We did count all the wrestling figures here, and at the end of this video, I'll announce how many we had. All right, we'll start with our oldest wrestling figures. These are the AWA figures from the early 80s, and this is before my time. This would have been, I believe, like maybe 79 through about 85. I don't know if they're quite that old, but they go from the guy with the blue pants there, which he's one of the ones I just bought a couple weeks ago. All these other ones are AWA figures, American Wrestling Association, which was based out of Minnesota. And these, I guess, some of them are my brothers. Some of them I've picked up at sales. There's a couple doubles there. There's the Road Warriors. There's the Road Warriors over here. I don't have the entire selection. I don't have every single one of the figures. I don't know how many that I'm missing. But I really like those. That's the oldest ones I have. And then if you move up here, these are the LJN figures. Now, most people, if you know wrestling figures or kind of pop culture 80s, might know these figures. These are what they call the big rubber figures. Most of these were my brother's. He was what I call a casual wrestling fan, meaning he liked wrestling, but he wasn't a diehard fan. So a lot of those were his. Some of them were my good friend, Russell, who's actually my brother-in-law. I think a few of those might have been his. They were actually maybe his uncles at one time. And then a few I've bought over the years. So this is not all of them. These are from the mid to late 80s. This is not the entire selection. This is all the ones I have. And there are a few doubles here. These are the LJN WWF. WWE now, but WWF figures. And then you move over, so you've got the AWA ones, then these LJN. LJN was the person or the company that made them. They were WWF figures or WWE figures. And then we move on to the ones that were actually mine, and these are the Hasbro figures. They are a little smaller, of course. They're about half the size of the rubber wrestling figures. They're plastic ones. And these came out, I believe, from like 89, 90 to about 94. And so each and every one of these are the ones that I collected. You see several up there. Dusty in the back, Ultimate Warrior, Piper, Dragon, and Bret Hart. And there's several of those. So there's a bunch of Hogan ones. These are 3 Hogans in the front, different styles. 3 Macho Man, Macho King in the middle, a couple Bruce Beefcakes and Andre. And then over here we have more Hasbro figures. Got a couple Shawn Michaels in the front, Honky Tonk Man, Road Warriors there, Legion of Doom, some DiBiase's and Perfects. Here's some more. Now, I don't have every one of these. I don't know if there's about 80 of them, and I have probably about 70 different ones. There is the last set that came out, which was like around 94. There's like 5 or 6 of those. I have one of them. I do have this Yokozuna. That's one of the last ones that came out. But there's like an Atom Bomb, there's a 1-2-3 Kid, there's Smoking Guns. I have none of those. Those are the ones that I'm talking, they're $100, $200, $500, $1,000. I've seen them listed online for that. I don't have any of those. And then there's a few other ones that I'm missing. There's a Crush I'm missing. There's a Rick Steiner there in the back that I'm missing. One of the light green Bushwhackers. And there's a couple others that I'm missing. Probably about... Overall, I might be missing 10 to 12, but besides those really expensive ones, I'm missing about 5 or 6. And so that's the Hasbro figures. Then we have, these are WCW Galoob figures. Now, these came out about the same time as the Hasbros, early 90s. these are something I've had some of those. I had a handful of them. I've picked some of those up. I just picked up one the other day. I picked up that Rick Steiner. That is not all of them, but that's probably about half of them. They didn't have as many as the Hasbro's, not even close. And I'd like to get all those. I have a note in my phone of each one of these section of wrestlers, each one of these types of wrestlers. So if I pick one up, or sometimes I go through a bin and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, do I have that one? I'll look at the list and you know, like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of money on these. So you got to look for them. These are kind of like the LJN, the big rubber wrestling figures, but these were WCW ones. There's Hogan, Giant, Nasty Boys, and Harlem Heat in the back. And like I said, there's a few more of those. There's not a ton of those either, but I don't have all of those. I don't really have all of any of the sets. And then you kind of switch over to more modern day wrestlers. Well, before that, we do have some of these. Now, these were the late 90s, the Attitude Era. These were like, you know, you got Bulldog there, you got The Rock, a Young Rock, New Age Outlaws, Triple H. None of these. At a time, I was still a wrestling fan in the late 90s, really the most popular time ever in wrestling. But by that time, I'm 15, 16 years old. I'm saving for a car. I'm, you know, hanging out with buddies. I'm not buying any toys anymore during this period. So I did not collect any of these. And I have a lady I go to church with. She said, you collect wrestling figures, don't you? She had went to a sale and bought pretty much this entire set. Maybe one or two that I've added or already had. So I have those up here at the top. There's so many. They started making so many figures. You just can't keep all of them. So, you know, there's just so many to get. Now, everything else, so you're looking at like these three shelves down, all the way across. These, for the most part, other than those original AWA, most of those were the boys. You've got a lot of AEW figures right here. You see the Young Bucks and Hangman and Moxley, Sting, Darby. That whole row is AEW. That's AEW. That's AEW. And some of that is AEW. You can see right there. Those are all AEW figures. And then the rest are what we consider Mattel figures. Most of these have come out in the last 15 years. You see some there. Some old wrestlers, Macho and Tugboat. Kind of tried to group them together. And then down here at the bottom, this is some more modern day, but some of the ones that I don't care as much about. There is that Rey Mysterio is like early 2000s. And then you've got some more figures over there. Once again, for the most part, these are the figures that I don't care as much about. I kept them on the ground. Because then we have this section here. These are also Mattel figures. And this is Attitude Era. Remember I mentioned these guys are Attitude Era? Those came out during that time. These are ones that have come out since then. See Austin there in the front. Undertaker, Rikishi, Rock, Foley. China back there. Eddie Guerrero. So that section there, that kind of platform, that's late 90s Attitude Era. This is early 90s. This is what we call the New Generation Era. And you have Vince there, even though I think that probably came out at a different time. You got Brett, Lawler, Bulldog, Diesel there, Bam Bam, Yoko, Vader, Piper. It's not perfect. There's a few others over here that you could put in that category. There's an awesome Razor Ramon, but he doesn't stand up great. So I put him over there. And then you have another section over here. These are all Mattel. These are more modern day, or at least in the last 10 years. You got New Day there, and Gunther, and you got the Undisputed Era there in the back, which were some of my favorite. Adam Cole, guys from NXT. Once again, modern figures, modern wrestlers at least. LA Knight, Jey Uso, Drew, Triple H, with his suit on there, Cody, CM Punk. And then you've got kind of a mixture. Some newer guys. You've got Firefly Funhouse, the late Bray Wyatt back there in his red shirt. There's a couple girl wrestlers there. Some of the best, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair. The Shield there in the front. If you move down here, I added these just since I made the last video. These are all figures that were the boys. Some current wrestlers, Bronson Reed there in the back, and then you've got some that aren't, like Samoa Joe. Got a young Dominic when he started, Chad Gable. Just kind of a mixed bag of who's who in the last 10 years or so of wrestling. And then down here at the bottom, these are ones I got for Christmas from Ethan. They're the Curtain Call figures. Razor, And Shawn, I still need to get Triple H and Diesel, or Nash, but Diesel. There's an Xbox there that was somebody gave me, or I think it might have been Ethan's brother Love. There's a couple rings back there. And so up here I got some NWO guys. Those are also those rubber figures, the WCW guys. Kind of forgot I put them up there. There's 3 there: Hogan, Nash, and Hall. There's the Monday Night Wars figure. Kind of go with the NWO. There's a Nash and a Hall when they debuted in WCW. I love those figures. There's a Austin at the top. These are my Shawn Michaels section. Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler ever. Shawn Michaels section. I've just been adding those guys here. I didn't know I had that many. And then there's a few in the box there as well. Miscellaneous Hogan's, Mattel, some other ones. You got the rubber thumb wrestler, the LJN, this big tall. And there's a couple WCW guys kind of sprinkled in there. You got these figures. These are the Masters of the Universe crossover. I don't have all of those. These are the boys as well. I like having those there. And then there is an LJN Cody when he was in AEW. And then last but not least, I got 2 other sections. We have these figures here. These are the retro figures. If you look at the Hasbros, my favorite ones, these were made to look like it. Packaging's the same size. They came out, when they first came out, I said, I'm not going to get them. I wasn't really doing wrestling figures. Not any new ones. And I said, I don't want to do that. And then I didn't get the first section. And then as the next ones come out, I said, I should. And I don't have a lot of that first series. But after that, I don't have them all, but I have most of them. I don't have JYD or Samoa Joe. There's a Ric Flair I'm missing. There's about 5 of those. I'll still get them. But in the last 2-3 years, I've got every single one of them, and I love them. I wish more came out, but that's what they got so far. There's a few new ones that I don't have, and like I said, there's about 5 or 6 that I do not have. And then they had come out with these Superstar figures, and I started buying these from the beginning. I said, I really like them. They kind of remind me of the AWA figures down here. They have a lot of accessories, and I am missing one. Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And then there's a couple new sections that just came out in the last month or so. I don't have those. But other than that, I've got all those others. And I'm going to continue to get them and save them back. And keep them here. And then one day, give them to the boys. They can sell them. And you could spend a lot of money on wrestling figures. And I'm not going to do that. Even though I've spent some money on them. But probably 90% of at least the Hasbros and those are the LJNs I had when I was a kid. And I didn't show off this section here. One more section. These are also Mattel figures that were the boys, and these are more like the golden era. You got Jimmy Hart there, and there's Jake the Snake in the back, Rude. There's a Hogan, Warrior. You got Macho and Elizabeth. Even though they weren't made years ago, they're older figures from a different era. And then there's a couple title belts that one I got for Christmas from my mom and one I got from Christmas from Brady. So that's kind of an update of my wrestling figure section. I also got some photos here. It's outside of the WWE headquarters in Stanford last summer. That was me wrestling, doing a Razor's Edge to a pillow when I was a kid. And here's some photos of me and my dad and the older 2 boys going to NXT. We were on TV. This photo was taken in from the TV. They were in the background there. And I have some other photos, but I don't know. Oh, most of them are over here, I guess. I'm not going to get into every single one of them, but some events we went to, some tickets of events, costumes we dressed up in Halloween, outside Madison Square Garden, Performance Center. So it's cool. And I also have these old wrestling magazines. All right, so I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I would say how many figures, wrestling figures, that we have. And if I counted correctly, we counted the other day, there is 644 wrestling figures here. Because I also, one more thing, I do have some AEW figures still in the box too, as well, up top. I don't know if that's something to be proud of or not. 644 wrestling figures. Thanks for watching. an update of our wrestling figure collection.